So, if I'm not mistaken, this is our third session. During the previous sessions, Bhakti Vijnana Gosvami Maharaj explained how everything in this world is subject to a certain rhythm, where all universal movements are synchronized according to established laws. Everything in the whole universe. And obviously, if someone remains in egoistic state of mind, trying to reverse the whole universal course, forcing to circle around himself, this, to say it mildly, will present a cumbersome or rather impossible task. The true goal of all the living beings residing in this material world is to tune to this rhythm, in other words, to feed into the will of God. What is His will? Goswami Maharaj stated that the time is not linear, it runs in circles. Everything here falls under established objective laws. For some reason, our modern society at some point have lost sight and touch of those laws. Krishna addresses these laws in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 16. He says he is using the word chakram. So this word chakra is used there. Chakra, as we all know, is the weapon. The weapon that Lord carries around signifying His will. In the material world, everything that happens in accordance with His plan falls into the combined meaning of chakra. This includes past, present, and future time, which we all are subordinate to. So in this verse, Krishna states that whoever does not follow the laws established by the Vedas, which are teaching us how to live in the harmony with this cycle, how to move without pushing against all universal laws, but in tune with the creation, such person who doesn't know that, he certainly leads a life which is full of sin. Such individual inevitably lives in sin. The cycle mentioned here in this verse, in the 16th verse, has been addressed in earlier verses, where all our activities were encouraged to be performed in connection with God, which is 3:9, the famous 9th verse of the third chapter. In this verse, work performed as a sacrifice for the Lord was defined as purifying, allowing one to gradually reach his original position. In such a state, one's individual rhythm is coordinated with Lord's universal vibration. If this doesn't happen, such arrhythmia leads to various heart diseases. These are not just materially caused heart conditions, they are very deep spiritual roots that enforce one to remain in the material creation. Another important note, if you remember, Maharaj insisted that we should be careful to our own and attentive to our own lives, to the lives of others we meet, to the events in which we are involved. We must be on alert, like slightly aloof even. This is true to a much larger degree towards the holy name. Therefore, we have repeated it several times aloud that the inattention is the root of all the offenses. This is a fundamental principle that we need to discuss further. Unfortunately, today we cannot discuss all the aspects of the holy name, of the tattva of the holy name, as this topic has no boundaries. We will stretch it to the future sessions, of course, offering also different speakers' perspectives. However, we can touch some parts of it today. There is a famous Padma Purana verse where Krishna says that those who seek God or some truth, usually they want to get something from God. After all, God has everything. If somehow it's possible to approach Him, nothing prohibits to pull some pleasure out of Him. Why fighting with others, trying to take away our part from them? It's rather difficult. So those who have more intelligence, they anyways first approach God, even though with selfless motives. They think, I will find him, I will ask him. He will give me because he is generous by definition. Although he will lose just a little bit, but I will feel satisfied. So people are looking for God. And there is a very interesting verse in Padma Purana where the Lord says where he is, where you can find him. And actually he says that he is not in Vaikuntha. He is not in the spiritual kingdom. He is also not in the hearts of the advanced yogis undergoing continuous meditation. But Krishna says, I'm always there where my devotees are glorifying my name and they talk about my qualities and my pastimes. So, as you can guess, Krishna could manifest himself right here. I hope we can make it work. So, Krishna is actually where devotees sincerely chant his holy name. This is a very significant point. We know that chanting the holy name is the main practice of Gaudiya Vaishnavas, especially during this Kali Yuga, our current age, because we know in different eras, Satya, Dvapara and Treta, a variety of other methods were used to reach self-realization and ultimately final goal of liberation. But in Kali Yuga, because people are very weak, even the materials, from the material viewpoint, people are very worried, they are lazy, both to spiritual and material lives. All these degraded qualities are described in Srimad Bhagavatam. So with this deeply rooted disease, even if we're offered any method for spiritual practice followed during Satya Yuga, like meditation, so how many of us would be attracted to such a routine today? It would need at least approximately 100,000 years, and then you can go back to the spiritual world. No, such methods are not practical nowadays. It is said that the more acute a disease is, the more simplistic a medicine should be. If someone is paralyzed by a disease, coming out on and off his consciousness, he needs a quick action pill. Plus, it has to equally work for everyone. Therefore, we read the famous verse from the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam where it said that although Kali Yuga is full of doshas, which is all negative tendencies and qualities, it has one significant advantage though. Simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, even seemingly hopeless conditioned living entity, all living entities are allowed to get the mercy of the Lord and obtain the love of God. More than that, we know that the present Kali Yuga is very special because we're so lucky. We had Krishna himself visiting us 5,000 years ago, plus 500 years ago. Lord Chaitanya in the mood of Srimati Radharani descended here. So he not gave us this Yuga Dharma, a method of chanting the holy name which is relevant for Kali Yuga, but Lord Chaitanya gave us the most unique gift of a holy name, which has emotions of prema mixed in it. This prema was experienced by the most exalted devotees from Goloka Vrindavan in their relations with Krishna. So hard to imagine the true meaning of this gift. The appreciation of it will come gradually to us as we get purified, as we get attached to the holy name, attached to the association of Vaishnavas. This is how the proper appreciation will come. In connection to this, there is an interesting story about a person who came to a king. He was an ignorant, poor person. So he said, I've just told that there is gold. It's quite an interesting thing. I know you're the king, you have everything. Could you kindly show me what a gold is? Of course, said the king, just go up the stairs and then you will see the central door and then you go into the treasury. There is a lot of gold stored there. So you can have a look at it. So he went up and he entered that hall and he saw a lot of gold. And then when he was exiting that place, he noticed that the stairs leading to the hall were also made of gold. Since he didn't know how the gold looked, therefore he couldn't see that was gold actually. So we're in a similar situation now. We're moving with our sadhana, following some principles, chanting, but we don't know what we're doing actually, what we're chanting actually. But when we get closer to the goal, to the essence of our practice, then we will look back and realize that everything we went through was precious nectar, the most gracious mercy to us. Mercy by definition is causeless. Nobody can explain why we have received it. You cannot explain it.
Однако мы начали с
So
невнимательности.
let's back to our discussion of inattentiveness, inattentive chanting. There are certain conditions to be observed while chanting the holy name in order to obtain maximum benefit out of it. And we know Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he noted that the distraction, inattentiveness manifests in three forms. So please note them down. The first one is audasinya, which is indifference to the holy name. We know how this emotional state is detected. Even that's quite known to us. Even if we rise early in the morning, after taking bath, doing our little morning routine, we look up at our japa bag with overwhelming duty, thinking gravely, wow, 16 rounds are ahead. I'd rather follow the example of Soap Muni and sit under the water surrounded with fish than chanting these 16 rounds. It seems extremely complex. Why does this happen? Because we're in the material world. We have myriads of attachments. We're full of ideas we want to pursue. All these things are robbing our consciousness. We diffuse it into tiny droplets, and then when the time comes to concentrate, we cannot pull it together. That's why we're left with this indifference. When we're engaged in material things, everything there is clear. Okay, you apply some effort, you overcome some obstacles, then you receive the results. And by the way, the success in the material activity is defined by the speed of obtaining the results. The faster the result, the more successful I am. Because karmic activities, they have this insignificant, but yeah, it has significant drawback. The activity does not imply any result. There is difference between activity itself and the results. But in Bhakti, however, there is no such difference. It's a method and it's the goal at the same time. This is its glory. So audasinya can be observed when devotees chant the holy name while watching TV, or listening to something, talking on phone, etc. This is this form of inattentiveness, the first one. The next kind is called jadya, which is dullness or laziness. Yes, laziness. Jadya. So this can be manifested at both gross and subtle levels. On the gross level, it appears when we, after barely putting our hand into the japa bag, we think, well, maybe I should do it later. So one cannot not only it seems heavy or near impossible to chant all 16 rounds at once, but sometimes devotees also even stop halfway through a round, marking the stopping beat, of course, so that not to lose those, half counts. So let's overcome laziness and they will appear again, the deities. So this jadya or laziness is when we stop many times during chanting, putting the bag down, stretching the routine for the entire day. One feels it's so difficult. On the subtle level, it affects the mind. It's the laziness of the mind. We cannot concentrate. The mind becomes scattered. Even though we do understand the value of chanting, but our mind is so lazy that it cannot concentrate even once a day in the morning when we're trying to chant. So this laziness is very hard to overcome, especially for a beginner devotee. But actually, this is not so hard to overcome. We simply have to have determination. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he suggests how to develop this determination. Pretty unique method he gives. He says that one needs to know how to have festivities. Yes, all Vaishnava festivals and Ekadashi days, at least once a month or twice a month. Whenever festivals appear in our calendar, a devotee should try to set aside all other activities and with encouragement and determination sacrifice the entire day for the service. Many people are fasting on Ekadashi, even excluding water, chanting all day. So these sacrifices, they focus our consciousness, and they give us determination, killing our lazy disposition. Whatever does not bring us fruit of our work immediately, that makes us feel discouraged of further action. Therefore, laziness eats us alive. And the last kind of inattentiveness is called vikshepa, which is distraction.
No,
jadi is laziness, but vikshepa is distraction. Audacity was ignoring, inattentiveness, then jadi, and now vikshepa. So distraction. And Bhakti Thakur points, says that this is actually the root of both jadi and audacity. So distraction is when we are something attracts our external, our attention. For instance, in my residence, we have a large window, which is non-different from a TV, because there's always something moving back and forth behind it. Either people walking their dogs, yardmen sweeping the streets, or crows fighting for a piece of bread. Non-stop flickering action, just like a TV set. And out of our mind gets distracted seeing all these actions. We always find time to pay attention to these nonsenses, except to the most important engagement, chanting the holy name. Simultaneously, by the way, we may still chant quite rapidly, doing the same our little things, writing down something with our left hand, although it's quite difficult to do with your left hand. Anyways, people are doing some notes, not to forget. Did you notice, by the way, that exactly during the chanting the best ideas descend on us? We feel an urgent necessity to do something which before was not on our radar. Therefore, when the thoughts come, we consider it mercy of Krishna. We think that I deserve it by my sincere chanting, so Krishna gave me enough intelligence, so I have to put it down. So this may go on during the whole entire chanting. So Mahanidhi Swami and Sachinanda Swami in their books about the art of chanting the holy name, and they say that if you feel like that, you just set the japa aside and write down your vital notes, then take japa again and finish chanting with undivided intention. So this is what we should do in that case. At our last session, we talked about the importance of early awakening during a special time, a couple hours before sunrise, when mode of goodness is in full swing. So this time is extremely beneficial for meditation and spiritual practice. Exactly at this time we should chant. Just getting up, even if you do it at 3 a.m., it's not enough. Suppose you can be looking at the stars, hearing the silence of the nature, enjoying for a few minutes. But then what will you do? Just go back to bed? So this time is meant for chanting the holy name. I wanted to ask the audience, did anyone try after our last session to get up early and use Brahma Muhurta time to the best of their ability? Raise your hands, whoever tried. Yeah, it would have been better if our seminar took place in the winter. It's easier to get up during winter's Brahma Muhurta. Well, our work even starts sometimes before Brahma Muhurta begins. But now, during the longest day of the year, it's not that easy. Yeah, someone intentionally made it difficult for us to cope with. Anyways, at this auspicious time of the day, we better try not to miss. I know from my own experience that when I chant early in the morning, then the chanting is definitely different. The closer we get to the middays mode of passion, it's more hard to chant, difficult to control the mind. You have this feeling like at 7, 8 o'clock, the gunas are different. Something is in the atmosphere starts spiraling around and it makes our mind disturbed as well. So chanting is not that easy, not that easy to concentrate during our chanting. But if we're lucky to get up at the best time and started chanting, there are still some few technical things which can assist us in proper chanting. I think it's worth addressing those. They will be helpful for some of us. So first of all, besides getting up early, actually, the point is not to get up early, it's to go to bed not very late. It's much more important than rising early, because to wake up is not that easy, not that difficult. In addition to this, it is advised not to consume any heavy food such as grains and beans. Ideally, Ayurveda doesn't suggest eating after sunset at all. Approximately after 6 in the evening, depending on the time, of course, time of the year. But anyways, after the sunset, better not to eat anything. But if you have this habit of eating 3 times a day instead of 2, then at least you should avoid heavy foods. Otherwise, we're forcing body to work hard digesting them instead of resting. Then it's getting up early in the morning will be difficult. You know, like even if you wake up early after Janmashtami, for example, after the Janmashtami feast, when you got so much mercy of Krishna's prasadam, so the next morning you wake up and you're looking for your image in the mirror, seeing some blurry spot instead, resembling gulab jamun or pakora, depending on what you ate most. Again, it's important to go to bed early. It's not easy, we must train ourselves, it's an art. When you live in the ashram, it's not hard, but in your own house, the discipline is not as firm. So if we somehow manage not to avoid heavy eating for the night and went to bed before 10 p.m., despite of all odds, and we got up early, there are still some tips the senior devotees advise us to do to improve chanting and focus our mind on the holy name. So again, one of the determination is one of the most important qualities of a devotee. Rupa Gosvami gives a wonderful instruction in Sri Upadeshamrita, the Nectar of Instruction. When he describes the 6 qualities that favor devotional service, he starts with what? Utsaha, enthusiasm. It's beneficial that a devotee has internal excitement to do service. Be serious about it, continue about it without distractions. If we have time today, we will talk about the story of Ajamila that is describing the glory of the holy name. So, after his near-death situation, when he witnessed the argument between Yamadutas and Vishnudutas, after that he sincerely repented his sins. And there is a series of verses in the 6th canto, in the 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, where he describes with determination how he will act further. And Prabhupada stresses in his purpose how important it is, this determination. We need to develop it, that I will try to chant from the first round to the last round without any interruption. And to help ourselves with this endeavor, it's recommended to sit straight with well-aligned back, which helps to control the mind. There are many meditative techniques also, just like the one which is called Trataka. Yeah, there is a meditative practice where yogis are using the flame of a candle as a single point of focus. The candle shall be located in a wind-free place to give a stable flame. We do not do that. Usually Vaishnavas use this technique by writing the holy name in Sanskrit, in Bengali or in Russian, and they just look at it. So this helps. The mind is always so restless, therefore single-pointed. If you look at this, the holy name, it helps you. And the best environment for chanting is to be surrounded by pure Vaishnavas. This is the best. Unfortunately, it's difficult to find any so much of pure Vaishnavas in Kali Yuga. Besides living in Moscow with instances, these instances, when you go somewhere to where devotees are, it's not just not just lose the Brahma Muhurta, but you can lose the entire day. But there is one way out, though, because we always have one special person around us. She is Tulasi Devi, who is the best of Vaishnavas. So if someone grows Tulasi at home, it's very auspicious to chant in her presence. We know that Haridas Thakur, our Namacharya, he always chanted in the company of Tulasi, wherever he went, and he traveled a lot.
Хари Кришна поет, поэтому прощается. Харидас Такур, он все время воспевал присутствие.
So Haridas Thakur was always chanting in the company of Tulasi Devi. That's very important. Another important thing is to tune onto the prayer wave before chanting. Before the Mahamantra, a few prayers to Haridas Thakur or our Namacharya or our spiritual master would help us to get a good start. Our spiritual master is always with us, ready to give us support. Have we asked for one? Once we placed ourselves in this mood of beggars asking for mercy, the mercy will be granted. Otherwise, we will be stuck chanting mechanically. In this case, Udasinya, Dzadiya, Vikshepa will accompany us on this path. We don't need to shout to invoke them. They are already there, around us. So these are the important things. If you have any opportunity to chant with other devotees, for instance, if you have someone living nearby, or you stay near a temple or a Namahata, or somebody is gathering Namahata somewhere where you're living, then you can get together and chant together. Of course, this requires higher qualifications and more responsibility, but that's important. Or go to an ashram? Yeah. Then we must pronounce the words of the holy name distinctly and correctly. There are certain rules of pronunciation in Sanskrit. Of course, you all know them, how to chant Hare Krishna, but just in case there are some new people here, I will emphasize how to say it properly, how to utter. There are short and long vowels, and therefore we say not Hare Krishna, but Hare Krishna.
Хари Рама, Рама Рама Хари, Хари Хари. То есть есть как бы длинные звуки.
So there are long vowels and there are short vowels.
Если мы будем неправильно повторять, то
if we pronounce it differently, that's another obstacle. It may be quite a small, but still, our mind will be diverted. So we must learn how to chant appropriately, without skipping letters or words. Another distraction is skipping the beads. We know how long it takes us to chant around about 7 or 8 or maybe 9 minutes, but suddenly it's 6, it's 5, and the speed is not changing and not changing. The problem is that we skip some beats. Hare Krishna starts from one beat and Hare Rama on the other. And sometimes we say, wow, in 50 minutes I finished my old japa. Wow, I think we reached the threshold of perfection. So fast I did it. Therefore, there are suggestions on how to avoid this type of chanting. I remember during Bhakti Shastri, Purnachandra Prabhu was giving us a lecture and he offered a certain method. When chanting first 2 lines of the mantra, then the bead can be rotated between the fingers. But once we move onto the second 2 lines, the hand and fingers must freeze until, all lines are finished. In the beginning, this may seem distracting, but it becomes very quickly a good habit. I'll just show you how it's done. So if you're using this method, then it becomes near impossible, to jump around the beads, skipping them. If someone has, a large hand, though, it's easy to skip the beads. So the holy name is not a trivial thing. What else can we achieve right away without any special preparation, without dependence on time, place, and circumstances, with no needed qualification, either material or spiritual? Anyone can chant the holy name, anytime, any place, whether it's clean or not. The place, with or without spiritual qualification, one may be initiated or not initiated. Chanting will bring enormous benefit to anyone. When we chant the holy name of the Lord, we must realize that it's non-different from Krishna himself. We address him in the most direct way, without any mediators. We're not using karma, jnana, or any other mediators, where there is a measurable distance between the practice and the goal of it. And most of the time, the goal is never achieved. But here, it's the shortest path. Chanting the holy name leads to the instant association with God. So if we develop the right mood, as just like Srila Prabhupada in the Science of Self-Realization, he gives us a famous example that the devotee should call out to the holy name so desperately as if he is calling out for his own lost mother, helplessly trying to find his mother. I remember how in 1979, when visiting my dad in Moscow, I got lost. I was a little kid back then, and my mother and my big brother was there. So we were just walking down the streets among crowds of people, and Moscow has enormous mass of people. So we were playing here and there, and they entered some shop, but I couldn't see them. I got distracted, and I was crying so much. I was left alone. I had never had a more desperate situation in my life. I was crying, calling for my mom so sincerely. Now I'm trying to revive that same feeling, to apply it to Krishna's service. If I could have the same feeling, I would consider myself extremely lucky. Another example was when I was visiting my relatives. There was a granddaughter of my elder brother, to whom I was kind of a second grandfather. I was not even a father myself at that time, but still I was like a kind of grandfather. So she was very little, less than 3 years old. We were picking up her from daycare. She was not feeling well, and therefore not in good mood. And her mom was working. It's quite common nowadays. So I came in here and her grandmother. After all the day in the daycare, she ran out, hoping mom will be there to greet her, but it was not. Those were us. And all the way back home, she was so disappointed, and such a sad expression she had. I looked at her as guru at that time for how sincere her emotions were. She continuously called for mom, asking where she was. I really wanted to learn this emotion from her, to chant like that. Where is Krishna? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So actually, if at the very beginning we're trying to know the proper techniques, how not to skip the letters, avoid distractions, not put our beads somewhere, not to do so many things at the same time, as we all know, we can concentrate on one subject at a time. No, we cannot do 10 things at a time. But further advancement in devotion means to cultivate our proper emotions. If we had those emotions even at the beginning, that's a rare luck. Because chanting with loving mood will always be attentive and will always be done with determination. The situations we have discussed earlier will not bother such a devotee, because when we value the holy name, knowing exactly who we are addressing, then the spiritual progress is an easy path with steady growth. And of course, at the highest level of devotion, when one is bestowed the mercy of a spiritual master and the pure Vaishnavas, he starts to chant the true, the pure holy name, Shuddhanam. Then Krishna appears in his heart, giving him prema, the love of God. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Jaiva Dharma describes this stage briefly. He says, if a devotee chants the holy name purely just one single time, he completely gets rid of his prarabdha and aprarabdha karmas. Means his material existence comes to an end. When such a devotee happens to chant purely for the second time, he surely gets prema. That's the power of chanting purely. The way many of us are chanting today is called Nama Abbas. It's not the holy name yet, it's just the shadow of it. So Abbas means, if you want to put the Abbas translation, Abbas means insufficient or not obvious presence of something. This is the definition from Amara Kosh dictionary. So Abhasa means insufficient or not obvious presence of something. So usually we say that's the shadow of the holy name. But this does not mean, however, that chanting Nam Abbas doesn't bring any benefit. Actually, holy name is very powerful, therefore even its shadow brings miraculous results, which often devotees have hard time to believe in. Therefore, in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a surprising story of Brahmana Ajamila. Ajamil in his youth was a very pure Brahman actually, who was diligently fulfilling his Varnashrama Dharma duties. But then at a certain time of his life, due to some misfortune, he got attached to an unchaste woman. So first he took her as a maidservant to his house. Subsequently he kicked out his legitimate wife and also his parents, although he was the only son of them. And then he was so involved with this woman that it took over all his life. He had to drop all his Brahminical duties, did not follow any good habits, no cleanliness, nothing. So he lived all his life fighting, gambling, stealing. Like that, he was trying to get means of supporting his large family. He had 10 children. Srimad Bhagavatam says the story pretty shortly, and getting to the point that when he was 88 years of age, then his time came. At that time, he had his 10th child. Can you imagine that? He was reaching 90s, actually. Srila Prabhupada writes in his purport that this particular situation demonstrates the severity of his downfall, because by Vedic standards, a person reaching 50 years of age was expected to renounce material duties and become at least vanaprastha or sannyasi. Long ago, this was the strict rule to follow, but Ajamila was not entangled with these affairs. That he did not even think about those rules. His son, he had this child when he was 88, so at that moment of his death, since he did not conduct himself piously almost all his life, so he had to face the death advocates, Yamadutas. There were 3 of them. No, they didn't have stretchers, and they pull by subtle hair, so to speak. They don't behave, ceremonially, fulfilling their mission. Having 3 of them was not an accident, actually. We have 3 things in our possession, which is body, mind, body, senses, and mind. Or we may say body, speech, and mind. You can say it in different ways. But these are the 3 things that we contact this world by. Due to such contact, we either purify or contaminate ourselves. Therefore, these 3 Yamadutas, they were needed, each judging for a specific point of contact or direction in life. So it turned out that Ajamila did not pass the final exam, and so he was screaming the name of his child, which was Narayana. By coincidence, since it's the name of the Lord, immediately the Vishnudutas appeared on the scene. You know all this story. Vishnudutas defended Ajamila. But the most important in this story, though, as Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains it, he gives a very interesting explanation that actually Ajamila was not liberated at the time of his death, when he called his son. After all, he was not addressing the Lord himself. It was actually Nam Abbas. One of the 4 forms of Nam Abbas is when a person pronounces the holy name but doesn't mean it. Ajamila was calling his son but at the same time, he was pronouncing the holy name of Lord Narayan. Therefore, the Lord took it quite personally. In Adi Purana, there is a verse also where the Lord says that if anyone chants his name with devotion, or even not with devotion, but with indifference, that individual permanently enters my heart, Krishna says, and I never forget him. This is quoted in Sachinanda Swami's book at the end of the book, The Nectarian Ocean of the Holy Name. In any case, Vishnu Chakravarti says that Ajamila actually reached the stage of liberation not at the last moment of his life, but when he named his son Narayana. This is an essential point. This is very important. As in the scriptures it is said that the holy name alone, or even its shadow, is sufficient for liberation. Only the shadow, nama bas, when one is naming saying this name, he doesn't even understand he is addressing God. It's still enough to receive liberation. So when he called his son Narayana, my dear son, he got the liberation. Hirim asks so many questions. Wow, how come? Ajamila technically was liberated, but he continued to live as he was previous, as he had been living prior to that moment. Of course, I doubt that at 88 years he was still trying to rob some people, but surely he was not a saintly person. There is no description like that. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur answers this question by comparison with other examples. One of them was Maharaja Janaka. He was a king, he was a liberated soul, but what was his behavior and actions? He continued to fulfill his royal duties. In the same manner, Ajamila continued to live by inertia. Yes, he uses this word inertia. As a proof, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur quotes verses from Nyaya Shastra, where there is the description of nuances pertaining to sinful desires and their consequences in our life. There are accumulated samskaras, as we all know, the impressions residing in our heart provoking us to certain actions. If samskaras are sinful, we will commit a sin, which will be followed by some consequences. So besides punishment that we will get, the action itself imprints new impressions in our heart, similar but of the increased force. And this becomes a chain reaction, a vicious circle of events. A person keeps running along the way, not able to stop. Even if he wants to, he thinks, I want to stop, but he cannot stop, because his heart is overwhelmed with the embedded impressions. So samskaras are of two types. The first type is bhavana, which is from the word bhava. We know this word, which means emotion. So this happens when a person performs an action surcharged with emotions. If he likes to do it, I'm doing some sin and I commit some sin, and although I know that's not right, but still I feel enjoyment doing that. So this emotion is coming back to our heart, strengthened. But the second type of samskara is called vega, which is inertia. In this case, the person performs an action without experiencing any taste to it. The result of this action doesn't matter to him, but he continues to do it out of the habit. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur clarified that the last years of the sinner Ajamila were spent in the stage of vega. He lived by inertia. As soon as he uttered the holy name, or rather its shadow, he lost the taste or interest in anything that he had made, that had made him happy before. He didn't have any taste to that. He didn't need it. So Srimad Bhagavatam says that the only purpose of existence for him was his son. They ate together, they slept together. Ajamila loved to play with him. We know from Bhagavad Gita that if someone does something without taste to it, without attachment to the results, such activities are called what? Akarma, yes. Such activities do not contribute to one's karma. In karmic activity, it's not the form that determines the result. not what we do, but rather with what consciousness we do it. That's actually the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. Apparently, they may seem to perform the same type of activity, but one of them is spinning the wheel of karma with the full speed, and the other one doesn't create any karma. The people may be working together, live together, be neighbors, relatives, whatever. So, this story of Ajamila should be very dear to us, because it resembles what we do. He was sinful, we are also maybe not very pure and sinless. So, to a large degree, stating from this story, the entire 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam glorifies Bhakti, of devotional service, starting from the glories of the holy name of the Lord. I should say not exactly from the holy name actually, but rather from its shadow. Yes, we should remember it always. Just imagine how potent is the true holy name of God, which Krishna will give us access to if we desire to have it with all our heart. So this Namabhas, the shadow of the holy name, the sages, those who are knowledgeable in chanting it, they say that basically Namabhas represents certain obstacles for direct perception of the God of his pure holy name. This signifies that a person still has certain ignorance or attachment to material things. Therefore, one cannot pronounce the holy name purely, and depending on how strong those impurities are in our heart, whether they are essential or non-essential, Namabhas may be of two categories: actual Namabhas and Namaparadha. Yes, so this aparadha is a scary word we're all afraid of. So if the obstacles in our chanting are non-essential, this is actually called Namabhas. This means at least we have some faith, at least little taste for chanting. As opposed to this, if one continues to lead indecent lifestyle, or worse, he has a desire to reject personal aspect of God, taking shelter of impersonal philosophy or Mayavada, such a person becomes aparadhi. First of all, he commits an offense to the holy name. This is a very unfortunate situation. But in Sri Chaitanya Shikshamrita, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur clarifies the difference between Namabhas and Namaparadha. He gives an interesting comparison. He says there are two types of people who chant the holy name. One type is called Bharavahi, and the other is called Saragrahi. Bharavahi means, what is that? Bharavahi means heavy load carriers. Yeah, heavy load carriers. And Saragrahi are those who require the essence. So for load carriers, what are those heavy loads pertaining to the soul in the material world? They are dharma, mundane religiosity, kama, sense gratification. What else? We have yes, artha, desire for wealth, and moksha, desire for liberation. So these are the individuals heavily disturbed with these four loads. They need, they need artha of this material world. They're desiring to get kama, and if they cannot get it, even after fulfilling their materialistic dharma, then they desire moksha. Yeah, when you have this feeling of frustration with this world after nothing goes their way, okay, just forget about it. Let me just merge, not, to avoid pain in relationships, in our attempts to reach something in the material world. So if a person chants the holy name with this mood, this is called Namaparadha. He continuously carries in his heart, in his head, these loads. He cannot concentrate on the holy name. He cannot understand the ultimate goal of chanting. He cannot properly appreciate the holy name. But if a person gets lucky receiving saintly association and he admits, yes, I'm good for nothing, I'm unable to achieve any success, but I know that the holy name of the Lord is my only hope, and I don't want to cultivate anything but the love of God, because this is the goal of every living entity, this is the constitutional position of a living entity. So, despite of chanting the shadow of the holy name in the beginning, gradually his faith will get stronger. And at some point, one will come to a position of pure chanting. Well, it's 20 minutes to 8. We practically ran out our time. Okay, I will not address something of a large magnitude, but the only important point I wanted to stress is how to avoid becoming nama-paradhi. So how can we prevent ourselves from going down to the level where we're chanting the holy name with offenses? It's interesting that in the beginning of our practice, when we chanted the Hare Krishna for the first time, when we start chanting, we start with which level? No, we start with Nama Abbas. Yeah, we were not chanting offensively, although one may be in complete ignorance at that time, torn apart by passionate desires or have entirely different goals. And at the first stages of chanting, we begin with purifying stage, but later on, due to the reason I will explain now, and I would like you all to note it down in caps lock. So this is the only reason why a person rolls down to the offensive chanting. Therefore, the results of this offensive chanting is not of any significance. The holy name becomes muffled by our constant desire to receive some fruits of our service. We always feel deprived in this world, or just fed up with everything and willing to drop it all and receive liberation, merging with the Lord. So the only reason, the main reason, the root reason why this is happening with us is asatsanga, the association with non-devotees. So please understand this correctly. I suspect you already rebel in your mind or your heart against it, thinking, oh, how is it? You may be thinking, how is it possible to avoid this type of association? We are surrounded by them. What exactly do you mean, though, by association? This should be clear. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur defines undesirable association as association with taste in it, with taste, with gusto, with bhavana rather than vega. So when we discuss some mundane topics, some people, even if they deserve it, considering they may have done something wrong, but when we find pleasure in diminishing someone, in discussing those topics, then on the subtle level, their undesirable qualities will be migrating to our heart, and we start having the same taste as they do. We begin to think similarly. Therefore, when we later come to the devotees, we perceive them as ordinary people. The same feeling we would have towards the deities, the same feeling we will have towards the holy name, which is usually the first affected. So this shows how a person falls down to a mundane platform where everything is seen by mundane vision, and he cannot appreciate the association with the devotees, and he is not attracted by that any longer. Service in such state equates to exploitation. Previously he thought that service was such a blessing that, despite of my insignificant situation, I can do something selflessly for Krishna. I remember how amazing it was when I visited the temple first. I thought of myself, I am, such a shaggy guy, yet still I am able to do something for Krishna. I was so happy about it. Anyway, For a devotee who lost such taste, again, service becomes an exploitation. The devotees become ordinary people. And actually, such individual considers devotees a gathering of hypocrites. They claim that, outside of the temple people, they achieve some real success. And what do devotees achieve here? Chanting Hare Krishna all day. How much more of it can be done? So you can see that this mentality gradually crawls into our mind, and one becomes aparadhi, and he cannot chant for a long time. Because this is the last thing you should do if you're aparadhi. It's chanting the holy name. Because there is no other sense. There is no results. Not in the future, neither now nor in the future, but you have to do something practical. But if a person is very careful in his behavior, and it doesn't mean that we have to build castles around us. We simply should be very careful while associating with others. We must always realize who we are, that we are souls, first of all, we servants of God, even if we are not perfect in our service, but this is our goal. Therefore, the values which may be too little for comprehension today, we still preserve them, thanks to our association with good devotees. So we do not want to swap those values or lose them. We believe in our spiritual roots, being everlasting eternal souls, and God being a person who has eternal relationship with us. Even if we are halfway to our goal, actually we have not made half a step yet towards the goal, but nevertheless we know that the relationships are eternal and we value them, we appreciate them. We don't want to swap them for something temporary. As Maharaj Prahlada says, punah charvita charvananam. This is the chewing the chewed. This is what usually people do. Therefore, they're always forced to change objects of their environment, their wife, their husband, or they don't want to listen to the same news, looking for something fresh, continuously engaged in reading new magazines, new newspapers. After reading the newspaper, though, you just throw it away. But when the newspaper was about to be purchased, they were so eager to get it. Actually, this is one of the indicators by which we can evaluate ourselves when we come to a lecture to hear about Krishna from Srimad Bhagavatam, and if nothing new is said there, something, so extraordinary that we need to note it down, we feel, then if there is nothing of that sort, then we feel bored, not interested, thinking that the speaker has nothing else to say and he keeps repeating the same stuff. So this is a red flag telling us something is wrong with our consciousness. For instance, Lord Chaitanya, who is, this is the example we have. Lord Chaitanya, who is the Radha and Krishna together, he was listening to Gadadhar Pandit narrating simple stories from Srimad Bhagavatam, and he could not get enough of them. Know that those were not stories from the 10th schedule, not Rasa Lila, but the Dhruva Maharaja story, Prahlada Maharaja story, which some elevated, quote-unquote, devotees considered too simple to pay attention to. But he asked them to be recited hundreds of times in a row. He said, "Tell me again." He told them hundreds of times in a row. Both did not sleep for days, and each time they repeated the same stories. They found some new nectarian taste in them, unique taste. So, if we're in a proper spiritual tone, and if we value the association of devotees, we will find endless... Srila Prabhupada gives an example. He says one may read Bhagavad Gita in one day, entirely, all 18 chapters. Reading it again the next very day, he will find new shades of emotions, some nuances and deeper meanings. Therefore, this inadequate association or satsanga, which often we fall victims of, is a very dangerous thing. Generally, we all agree that associating with devotees is beneficial. Nobody would object to this. Well, at least sometimes. That's beneficial, but the second thing, that the non-beneficial association, which keeps feeding the very tastes that we are trying to eliminate in ourselves, those things that tie us to this material energy. So if we're not careful about that, about that type of association, it will deprive us from the manifestation of the holy name in its full potential. And it's therefore Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, elaborating on Srimad Bhagavatam episode we just mentioned, he stresses the fact that Ajamila's liberation was a result of initial naming his son Narayana, and he then presents a logical question: how does it work with others who utter the name of God accidentally, using derivatives of the word Rama as a brand names, for example? These may represent these are the same Namabas? Does it mean that all of them get liberated? Do they all go to heaven, or do they all go to spiritual world or hell, whatever? Let's figure it out. So there is a difference that after Namabasa is pronounced, a person must not return to his old ways of living, saturated with the taste to all these sinful activities. If that happens, however, a person moves to a category of aparadhi, or offenders. So Ajamila, believe it or not, did not cross that line. The first time he named and called his son Narayana purified him to lose the taste to his previous activities, which he enjoyed for the majority of his life. Sometimes people are mimicking our devotees, doing kirtan at Harinamas, like some banana vendors on the street. They chant Hare Krishna, but sarcastically they do. This is actually another Namabas. It's really not that significant how the holy name is chanted carelessly, without true meaning, maybe used as a part of a song or a joke, even if it's used with hostility, like Shishupala did it. Doesn't matter. The holy name has extreme potency always. But if afterwards a person who has been charged with new enthusiasm suddenly eagerly rushes into the material life again, trying to become a shark there, because if you're not a shark there, you become carp and you will be eaten. So you have to become a shark. So if you get back into it, you become an offender. For such individuals, the holy name will not produce any result quickly. Not that the holy name has less power, the individual simply has layers upon layers of coverage preventing it to work. On the contrary, if a person chants the holy name with faith, which is called Shraddha Namapas, such practice will lead to amazing results quite soon. So probably we will stop here. Do you all have your japa beads? So, yeah, by the way, tomorrow we have Ekadashi, so it's so favorable that we are talking about the holy name today, right before Ekadashi. It is so beneficial. I hope tomorrow devotees will try to cheerfully chant more rounds. I would like to offer chanting together one round of Mahamantra Hare Krishna within, and Bhakti Vijnana Goswami Maharaj requested us specifically to do chanting together every time we gather on Wednesdays. So please always bring your japa bags. We will always chant one round together. I'm not an expert in group meditation, but I hope you recall how we were taught to close the eyes, follow your breath, to calm down, etc. So we can do it without paying attention to anyone. We will try to chant together, putting all our faith in the holy name, in God's mercy. We will try to pass our elevated mood onto tomorrow Ekadashi. Ekadashi is the mother of devotion, such an auspicious day, special day, when all our practices multiply manifold. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna I see that you cherish the holy name so much that you won't even stop and just go on. So, but we need to summarize everything we discussed today so we can remember the main topics for the future. By the way, I just thought of a devotee. When I was living in a temple, he came to us from Yakutia. For about 4 years, it took him half a day to chant. You know, when all the others, they chanted for 2.5 hours, but he couldn't understand what was the problem. After so many, all the people, they chant for 2 hours, okay, 3 hours. But after several years, 4 or 5 years, it turned out that he chanted one round forward and then backwards. And basically, he chanted total 32 rounds, and he was upset with his speed. He was thinking that he was chanting 16 rounds so long, but then he discovered that actually that was 32, and unfortunately he found out about it and he started chanting 16. He was blessed by Krishna, specifically for those 5 years. So anyway, I'm trying to connect today's topic to our past discussions. We emphasized that it's desirable to get up early, and not just get up early to discover, new star, or, to count the existing ones, but exactly to use this most auspicious time of the morning for meditation, for chanting the holy name of the Lord. We also need to learn doing it with determination. So we should not miss this opportunity and use our determination. And it should manifest in going bed early, as early as possible. This is the determination. So I'm sure you all get this feeling that you get up early, you just jump out of the bed, and you're so eager to chant as soon as possible, even, you're even thinking about skipping bathing. Of course, it can be different with times, but determination is very important. We also discussed some helpful chanting techniques suggested to us, sadhakas. And so we shall not ignore them also. Those are our little secrets to success. Most important, as we said, but the most important, as we said, is the mood. We will not reach any goals if we simply correctly pronounce Hare Krishna with all proper sounds. This is not sufficient. We must chant with feeling. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu included in Sri Shastaka, in his eight verses, the description of the development of feelings of a devotee, from the first to the last verses. And in the first verse, he glorifies the holy name and the benefits it brings to a person. But in the second verse, though, he says that despite the fact that the name of Krishna is none different than Krishna himself, with all his energies present in full degree, including the energy of bliss, there is still no exceptional taste for chanting. Durdaivam idrisham ihaja ninanuragaha. The meaning of this line is to show that when someone learns correct chanting technically, at some point he must reach the stage when he faces his failure and at the same time yearns to receive the mercy. Therefore, one is crying for help. This is the state of the mind appropriate for chanting, helpless but desiring to receive the mercy from the Lord, Vaishnavas, Namacharya, spiritual master, temple or home deities, etc. In such a state, the taste towards the holy name will be increasing. Later, when we need to associate with others at work or at the streets or wherever, with the relatives, we will know we have something to lose, and therefore we will value the association of devotees, the holy name, our humble service. When one has something to lose, he preserves it by all means, seriously. When one has nothing to lose, nobody cares about letting it go. Having experienced the taste of eternity, the potency of the holy name and chanting, which are the basis of our practice and the main service, these will become venues through which we develop our relationship with Krishna. This is how we know about our Swarupa, or our form which is most acceptable to Krishna for interaction with us. All this will be the result of chanting the holy name. Therefore, Srila Rupa Gosvami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is Nectar of Devotion, he elaborates about 64 main forms of devotional service. Actually, the devotional service has an infinite number of forms, but he lists 64 which are more prominent. Further, he separates 5 the most important ones. Those 5 are so incredibly powerful that they can give bhava, the preliminary stage of love, for a person immediately. Besides, our Tattvacharya Jiva Goswami, commenting on those verses, he says that actually, if one thinks that the chanting of the holy names is equal to other forms of bhakti, he commits an offense. Because the holy name stands alone in relation to all categories of all forms of bhakti practices. Again, these 5 powerful forms of devotional service, they unveil or their influence only when are accompanied by chanting Hare Krishna. The rest 4 are Bhagavata Shravan, listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, Sadhu Sangha, association with Vaishnavas, Adhuravasa, living in the holy place, and Srimurtira Shadhaya Seva, serving the deities. So all these powerful forms of devotional service should be followed by chanting the holy name. Srila Prabhupada, on numerous occasions, he mentioned about it in his vast number of books, thus leaving us his legacy. So this is the treasure. He wrote all his books only for one reason, to convince people in chanting the holy name of the Lord. This is actually the aim of all his purports. So our daily practice should be viewed with deepest respect, enthusiasm. Like sometimes devotees are quite reserved in their practice, being afraid of committing offenses, thinking maybe it's better not to chant at all, and then you can avoid being in aparadhi. People think, how can I save myself from... We haven't even discussed the offenses. There are 10 of them with all different variations. Next time, maybe during our other lectures, we will talk about that. So people are thinking how to avoid aparadha. But actually, if we simply practice Krishna consciousness and follow the instructions of our spiritual master and the senior Vaishnavas, then the 10 offenses will be always counteracted positively. For instance, the first offense is offending the devotees who dedicated their life to spreading the glory of the holy name of the Lord. And we may think, we cannot even approach any devotees in this respect. No, this is actually not what it means. How can we positively approach the devotees? Simple solution. We must glorify those devotees and serve them. So in our practice, there are so many powerful tools by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and all the parampara who carefully protected and maintain them with purity. Even today, in today's world, where spirituality is so minimal, they are present by its absence. So therefore, these tools are so pure. They are there, and this is our luck. So if we continue our practices under the guidance of devotees, all our discussion topics that we are going to talk about, all that will be automatically figured out. So the inner state we are having will not allow us to become offenders of the holy name of the Vaishnavas, of the Vedas, of the spiritual master, etc. So all those offenses will not be there. Let's associate with the devotees with faith, invite them to our places, come to where they are, learn chanting from them. If we have some issues, there are always trusted devotees around who can help. We can always turn to senior devotees who reach certain success in chanting the holy name, sharing our thoughts and fears with them, asking for help. This is normal. Much worse is when one keeps his pride, retains inner emotions, and stays, cold-blooded, showing that externally everything is fine, although one feels, terrible inside.
это лучше не показывать.
But we just want to show that this is one of the situations when our consciousness descends to the mundane level, where there is always some sort of competition. One has to pose himself as expected by others, otherwise he will be pulled into the material whirlpool and totally consumed. This can happen, at work or on the way there or back. Thus, people are generally afraid to open up. All their life they spend maintaining their status quo, the image which in common society is welcomed. All our energy we waste for this pretense to support our image, to patch it up regularly. As being, unnatural, it continuously keeps falling apart. So just imagine if you collect all that energy, wasted energy, preserve it, concentrate it, and direct it to the service of the Vaishnava, spiritual master, in the holy name. Imagine what will be the result. So one of the main goals of the initiative started by Bhakti Vijnana Gosvami, with plans to continue, is to remind us about the main aspects of our practice, such as what and how we do it, which feelings we're investing in it, what to expect if we follow the path diligently or otherwise, so that the devotees could evaluate themselves practically, maybe notice some gaps or learn something new. This is actually what association of devotees is all about. We share our experience with one another. After all, any spiritual experience we receive during our life descends unto us by someone's mercy. It's impossible to acquire anything spiritual by material senses or the mind. It's impossible. All such things, they descend by mercy, and we get them just by mercy. And then it shall not be difficult for us to share it with others. It would be, quite strange if we, having received such a gift for free, would ask anybody, to pay us for it. So the devotees at times share their experience so enthusiastically that they just wouldn't let others go, without fully loading them. You just happen to ask them for an advice, but be prepared to receive the full package. So we talked about attentiveness, which also applies to the situation when we share something with others. We must remember not to share anything out of our own sake, not because, we wanted to spill out our wisdom on others, but we truly want to help someone. Sometimes a couple of words are enough, and other times even thousands of words are not sufficient to support or encourage a devotee. Individual approach is a must. Now, please be attentive and nonetheless enthusiastic.
И я хотел сказать, что не забудьте, пожалуйста, в следующую среду, точно так же в 18:30, приходить со своими конспектами, с ручками, в 18:30, в 6:30, как обычно, и с мешочками. И следующее занятие проведут два святых человека, которые приехали к нам из общины Чаупати, из Бомбея, Горгопал Прабху и Шикшаштака Прабху, и они будут рассказывать, делиться своим опытом, который они получили там от Шрила Радханатхи Махараджа. А в следующую среду, через одну среду, будет Госвами Махарадж продолжать, потому что он вернется только 6 числа. И он сегодня звонил мне и просил передать вам, что он очень переживает за вас, думает и переживает за этот курс, и просит вас приходить.